Hello, welcome to the Lately in PHP podcast. After 3 hours trying to set up everything again with Google Hangouts on air to.
It's kind of finally in PHP.
Yeah. Well,
finally in lately in PHP.
I should rename this podcast to that or something very similar. And finally, this is episode 27, and this time we have back Ernani Joppert as a regular co-host.
Hello.
You have been very far, and you have returned to your homeland. How
Yes.
are you doing, Ernani?
I'm doing great. Sorry for the folks to be missed out, but hopefully everything will run smoothly, and I'll be back regularly.
Yeah, don't worry. Fortunately, Michael came, so.
Hopefully we'll be able to manage this Hangout situation because it's not stable yet.
Yes, Google has to fix that. Anyway, we have several interesting topics to cover in this podcast related with PHP world. Oh well, actually, this past month, August, has been kind of slow. Not many things happened in the PHP world, probably because most people, at least in the North Hemisphere, is on vacation, and I think they'll probably only get back in September or so.
Yeah. Back where I was in Sweden, there was midsummer and summer, so I guess everybody in Europe hangs out on vacation at that period.
Probably.
While us here at the South Hemisphere party on Christmas and in January.
Well, but moving on with the podcast, we are going to start with some, not many subjects, things that have happened in the PHP world lately, starting from the release of PHP 5.3.16. Basically, not much to talk about. Basically, just a few bugs that were fixed. As well, PHP 5.4.6. It's basically the same thing, just a few more bugs that were fixed, about 20, as you may see in the page in the php.net for this release.
And hopefully not much of bugs introduced as well.
Well, we don't know. I've seen some comments about things that were broken, so maybe you should give it some time before you upgrade.
Yeah.
From what I heard, there was nothing really serious that would urge you to upgrade, so maybe there is no rush unless you really need something that was fixed this time. But other than that, there was not much to talk about, and so we are going to move this time to another section of the podcast.
Just so I'm curious here, I see lots of elephants behind you. What's going on?
Yeah, actually, it is funny here. I have actually a question for you because on my screen it is blank. Do you see my picture or just a blank screen?
No, I see your picture. Everything is.
Well, something is just wrong on my side anyway. But back to the matter of the elephants, we've talked about that in the last month, and I see that you already got yours.
Oh yeah.
This is the new batch of the elephants that was produced by practically myself as I mentioned in the past, you used to order some elephants from Nexon, a company from France that used to produce them. But since Damien Segui left the company, it seems no new batch was produced, and they are sort of missing in the market. And therefore, I decided to produce these elephants, and hopefully they will be well appreciated. They are not for sale.
Not for sale.
Several people have asked me if they would be for sale, but I only produced a few that would be to give the top, some of the most prominent contributors of the PHPClasses site. I produced a very small batch. It was not inexpensive, but I think it will be a nice symbolic gift to everybody, including yourself. You already got yours. Several other people got theirs. And as usual, there will be at least a prize to be given next year, which will include one elephant to the winner of the Innovation Award that we'll be talking a bit more about ahead in this podcast. But back to the actual podcast, I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is about some of the new features that are being planned, at least proposed for this for the upcoming releases of the PHP. One of them is basically a proposal to support the finally keyword, which is to be used in exceptions. For those that are not familiar with this proposal, basically what it will allow is to have an additional section of code that you can add to your exception handling. So besides try and catch, you have also finally, which defines some code that will be executed regardless whether there was an exception being thrown or not. And this is just to allow developers to implement some code that needs to perform some cleanup operation after the actual code that is inside of the try block. Ernani, I have a question with you. These try catch implementations of the exceptions in PHP were basically inspired in the Java implementations. I wonder, does Java also has finally?
Yes, finally is introduced, I guess, in Java, just because basically exactly what they require here. You don't have to repeat your code when you're done with a statement. If it causes an exception or something, if you have a finally block, the try block will try to execute, and if it fails into any exceptions, it will throw the exception and then execute the finally code.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, and that's nice to see going on PHP as well, because it works in Java. So why shouldn't it work in PHP as well?
Yes, I think this is basically to avoid a workaround that some people were doing, like you see in this page, the proposal.
Yeah, basically you see twice the MySQLi close function being called twice, which is unnecessary. So when you have the finally one, you just have it once at the finally block.
Yeah.
And you can ensure that the connection will be closed no matter what happens.
It is not just that, it's actually people who are just catching, using catch to do the cleanup.
Yeah.
And actually throwing the exception again. So it is handled by the upper level of exceptions that may have been set up to trap this any exceptions unhandled by this block. And well, I confess that I do not use much exceptions. I have got so much used to the lack of exception handling before PHP 5 that I never got used to use exceptions, but I think will be quite useful for people. This proposal was actually already approved. There's this. Well, I think it is approved because, despite it says here that is still under discussion, but there is a vote, and 25 people vote in favor of it, and only 5 against it. So I think it is approved in practice. I don't know in what release it will be made available. Probably only in PHP 5.5. I don't know yet. Or maybe already be some of the upcoming PHP 5.4. I don't know, but from what I heard, the plan is to make major PHP releases go out faster than before, not have to wait 3 years for the new versions. And I think this is a good thing. I don't know if it will be a very, very important thing to justify a new major release, but I think it is interesting.
It helps to make the code cleaner as well as more understandable instead of confusing, and I think it's a good thing, although it doesn't impact much on the whole thing. It's reasonable to see those things coming through.
Yeah. Well, other than that, I think what is planned for PHP 5.4 is something that we comment in the previous podcast, the so-called generators and the yield keyword, which is still a bit confusing to understand, but we comment about it in the previous podcast, not necessary to comment about it again. So from what I heard, the plan is to have some release of PHP 5.5 about December. So that's interesting because it gives a sign of vitality to the PHP, not having to wait 3 years or some years for a new release. And okay, as I said, there was not much more to talk about in the PHP world. So I have other topics not so much related with PHP to talk about, starting from things that are related with PHP, but not on the PHP world, namely some how do I call it, virtual machines to interpret PHP code in other languages, starting here with the PHP.js, which is a new virtual machine that compiles PHP in JavaScript and executes it. There was another project also called PHP.js, which basically aimed to provide similar functions of PHP in JavaScript, but that's not the same project. This one that we see here is basically that. I don't know what could be an interesting use for these kinds of projects. Why would you want to run PHP on
the browser?
Yeah, well, on the browser or on the server, because now you can execute the PHP, JavaScript on the server with Node.js or some other server-side implementation. Ernani, do you have any clue what could be a good purpose for these virtual machines to execute PHP?
I'd say if a developer has to deliver some things faster and he has more fluency on PHP, he could benefit from the PHP syntaxes, functions, etc. And as well as if merged to the server side into Node, you could mix both codes of JavaScript and PHP. But other than that, is just trying to simplify the amount of languages that you have, which also could be something. But I think that the lack of, I'm not sure if it would perform. I guess it would have a layer of processing that would probably represent something that may impact the JavaScript performance. And so far, I'm not sure if it would be reasonable to put it into production code situation.
Well, I don't know, because if you think, for instance, about Node.js, which runs on top of the V8 virtual machine developed by Google, which is the same that runs inside of Chrome to execute JavaScript on the browser side.
Right.
It's quite fast, and since in the case.
Right, but the thing is, adding a PHP interpreter inside of a JavaScript interpreter, then putting everything on top of it, it's like it has to have a layer of understanding the PHP code before executing it or translating it into JavaScript, then to execute the JavaScript script block. So probably it has an added step there to interpret the PHP code, and even that JavaScript isn't yet at its utmost speed. You see some lag sometimes.
I don't know. Well, in the case, it's not really a PHP interpreter. It's actually it converts PHP into JavaScript and then executes it.
Yeah.
When they call virtual machine in practice, they mean that some runtime libraries are implemented inside JavaScript, the PHP VM, as they call it. So I do not expect. I did not try it, but I do not expect it to be too slow.
I don't want to discredit them or anything. I just say that if you are using JavaScript to understand the PHP and translate it somehow to JavaScript, it has to have a step of processing, which is not the usual JavaScript code. So that's the only concern that I have on the performance side. But sometimes it may be the case, because imagine you already have some calculation functions which is very complex and it's already coded in PHP, and what you can do is just include it into a web page and then benefit from that execution of those functions. Then it's a reasonable thing. But I'd say to start a new system and
probably. Well, in the that could be a good purpose for this library, this project, which would allow to use PHP libraries in JavaScript. Could be their purpose. I remember, at least in the past, for instance, there were certain components that were only made available in Java, like, for instance, banking applications. They would only make available libraries in Java, and if you wanted to use them in PHP sites, you would have to call to use some Java virtual machine to execute that code from PHP, and then it could allow to access the whatever was on the banking side, like payment systems and things like that. Well, I don't know, but it could be a similar situation, but this time would be to use PHP libraries in JavaScript.
But since you are involved with the JS classes and the JavaScript world more than me, today, if you use somehow a way of minifying your JavaScript, or somehow obfuscate your JavaScript code, I think it's pretty much enough to have a safe application logic on the client and on the JavaScript side of the client. I wouldn't see people doing reverse engineer on those things. I mean,
Yeah.
they could, especially on a financial institution, but they would require a lot
Yeah.
of effort to do so.
Well, I was talking about Java components, but that was something a long time in the past when PHP was not taken very seriously, and the idea is to provide some security layer
Oh
on
yeah,
the
I
client.
totally understand having those components in PHP. But my understanding is, would the JavaScript obfuscation and minification be enough for most of the scenarios, or would you think that it's
No.
still required to have some specific server components that
Well, I
some
don't know. In the case of that Java example, I was thinking about purpose to access
yeah,
some payment gateway but the component would still run on the server side, not on the browser side. So the idea was not to protect the access to the code. What was probably some cryptographic implementation that
yeah.
they only wanted to implement in Java and not in any other language. And
I
well,
understand.
I don't know. I'm just making a parallel here, just
Right.
to give an example of why would someone provide a component in one language to be running on another language.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's the case. And talking about that, this leads to another project that is somewhat similar, but not for JavaScript. JavaScript, it's for Python. And this is probably even more hard, but in the project it does not seem to be so complete. It's called the HIPV or HIP, or I'm not sure how to read this because this is an invented name. Uh,
IP.
IPVM, maybe. Well, go on figure. And
They could probably rename it to dash T VM. It would be
oh,
somehow a name, because when you have a Python interpreter, you probably have to organize your code into tabs and everything. So it would probably make sense to have a dash T VM. I mean,
well,
not
I don't know what is
or
the
any
purpose is because they show some performance charts here,
voice.
and they sort of claim that there is some improvement on doing certain operations in terms of performance, but it's still pretty much very incomplete. And if the purpose is to improve performance, well, I don't know if this is a really it would be worth doing this.
Yeah,
If you are going to optimize to as much as possible, because I think they in the end they convert the Python code into C++.
yeah,
But that's basically what the op VM of the Facebook project does. Uh, well, now it has a dynamic translator uh, for the just-in-time virtual machine, but the initial project was just to do that, convert PHP to C++, and then build a whole web server application in a single executable that would do the same as the PHP code to handle the web requests. And well, in this case, they are showing some performance figures as it seems to be the motivation for their project. Well, if somebody started this project, but maybe they had a reason to do it, like they have a specific purpose on which they probably have some PHP code that they wanted to run faster, but I don't know if this is the ideal way. I also do not have experience with Python to evaluate this, but I don't know. Ernani, do you have any Python experience, or do you know these PyPy projects and these libraries that they show here to provide any enhancement? What is your take on this?
I've been involved into Python very in the past for some situations, but other than that, I'm kind of away from it. And I've been digging into some app engine things about Python and Django and those frameworks, but nothing very fluently. I mean, no real tools were built with it. So I'd say I can't say much about it, given to the stage that I've been using Jython as well, which is a Python interpreter done in Java, but nothing major. So I would say I would prefer to say anything about it.
Yeah. Well,
you have to ident your code with a -t and with a tab. So
yeah.
I'd say it's kind of another thing in the world to
Yeah.
about your coding and indentation, and I'd say
Well, there is always people in the PHP world that for some reason also deal with Python and might be interested in this project. So
oh yeah, for sure. And Python is growing. I mean, it's growing a lot because of the Google ecosystem. Google uses its. I feel that if App Engine would run on PHP as well as Python, we would see that the community, both communities, could benefit from it. But yeah, it's another alternative on the open source world, and we should encourage them. I have nothing against it.
well, it seems that for that circumstance of the App Engine, that Google only provides either support for Python or Java. If you want to use App Engine for some reason, you are restricted to that. There is the most requested feature of the App Engine project is
PHP.
Is to have PHP support, but for some reason they've refused to do it. I don't know, but I suspect it's probably related with the fact that the creator of Python is the leader of App Engine project. I think it's leader is the role of the Python creator, Guido van Rossum, and I understand that being the father of Python, maybe he does not want to have PHP competition.
Yeah.
But which, from the point of view of Google, it does not make much sense because they are wasting the whole PHP market. They could attract much more paying customers to the App Engine platform, and this way they are sort of turning them down.
Yeah.
But we already talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
It's basically a Google problem.
And we will still kind of need Google about it, because come on, we are a PHP community and we want PHP to be everywhere, because you see, the thing is, I've been using PHP Fog for some projects, some concept projects, and I like the way they have it on the cloud, and they provide you with the load balancer, proxy, etc. And it's very easy to use, and I see that the world of PHP having alternatives to those kinds of services, it would be
Precisely, PHP is not really in a need for App Engine, but I
Yeah.
think App Engine would be much more popular if they supported PHP. It's not just supporting PHP. For instance, in those so-called platform as a service uh, uh, hosting companies, not just PHP Fog. There are several others, but
Yeah.
from what I understood, I never tried it, but from what I understood, we actually had the CEO of the company here,
Yes.
and
Because
he explained that you just can drop in your regular PHP code there, and you do not have to change the code to make it work within its platform, because it's basically they just provide scalability with several stuff on the environment that you do not have to be bothered to configure.
yeah.
So although it will be probably interesting if App Engine be available in PHP for PHP,
Yes.
uh, the way they work is probably not very convenient because you have to adapt your code to work with their APIs. It's
Yeah.
not something that will work transparently with your
Yes.
um,
And on the Java side
application.
of App Engine, which I've been digging more about, other than Python, you can't spawn any threads, so it's very limited on that sense. And
Yeah,
given that most of the J2EE application servers, some libraries, okay, are compatible with that, but I've seen some applications that requires to spawn threads or to perform other things that Google doesn't allow you to do. So it's
too
I'd say
restrictive.
yeah I'd say that having PHP with the power that PHP has is something, but kind of let's imagine that way. If Google would adopt PHP and put it on safe mode, then it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah,
So that's what I think about it. But just give an example. Imagine most of the WordPress blogs hosted on such environments, such scalable environment as App Engine is. That would bring lots of competition to the market, to the Google businesses as well as to other businesses like e-commerce applications. You have OS Commerce, you have PrestaShop, you have
yeah,
tons
Manuel.
of other Zencarts, you have tons of other open source applications that could rely on those kinds of architecture. And still, we have PHP Fog that can do it. We have other PaaS environments, but Google joining it, it would represent a lot of opportunities for the PHP world,
Yeah.
and that's what I would be looking for.
Well, I don't know. From what I understood, Google already had to adapt to the needs of the real world because in the beginning they only provided some basic key value storage type databases, and
Yeah,
then more recently they've decided to actually support MySQL.
yeah,
So, because the world revolves around MySQL, although there are always people that, for some reason, they are more favorable to NoSQL databases, uh, uh, yeah, Google had to adapt to the needs of the real world. Let's say somebody wants to run WordPress on the top um, of App Engine. Uh, Even if Google supported it native PHP natively, um, uh, WordPress relies mostly on MySQL, and
oh
it would have
yes.
to run. Well,
And
it's possible to.
MySQL is an awesome piece of software, if I would say. I mean, PHP without MySQL support wouldn't be as big as PHP is, as most of the web itself. It's sort of a combination. Now, okay, we have Nginx for the HTTP side. we have SQLite for embedded applications, but still, I haven't seen anything compared to MySQL on the database side. And given that it can cluster, it can replicate, and it can perform referential integrity, and oh my, imagine if we would have to pay licenses for vendors such as Oracle or Microsoft or any other database providers. I'd say that the web wouldn't be as big as it is, and having PHP and MySQL combined would be a huge achievement for Google, in my understanding.
Yes, precisely, and there was a certain fear when MySQL was sold to Oracle that they somehow kill it. And recently there are some news that it seems that Oracle might be holding off certain new features or bug fixes of MySQL. I don't know if this is true or is some sort of some conspiracy theory, but I think it would be bad, even for Oracle, because even for MySQL there are lots of people that would like to pay for support.
Yes, even though
for MySQL.
Even though Oracle would do it, there are things that can't be. It's like a viral video. When it's on the web, it's on the web, and the source code of MySQL was open source before. So there was some folks which ported it to, or forked it before it was released to or sent to Oracle or bought by Oracle.
Yeah.
And I would say that it would only bring bad reputation to Oracle if they would do any sort of limitations. And if that happens in the future, I'd say the community is ready to address that situation in a good way.
Well,
but hopefully
somehow
they will have the good sense and keep MySQL as it is, which is one of my key favorite softwares. And yeah, as well as PHP is, I'd say that if you're going to host a hosting environment, whatever there is, you have to have the ability to give to your customers a MySQL alternative.
Right.
And it's good to know that Google at least improved on that sense.
Yes, and regarding MySQL, there are already open source alternatives, not exactly alternatives, but at least companies that provide open source tools that are alternative to some tools that Oracle only makes available to paying customers. For instance, Precona DB provides tools for taking live backups of databases that use InnoDB. And if you really don't want to pay and want to rely on open source tool, you have a solution. But obviously, Oracle holding back new developments of MySQL, it's not good. And
I think it would draw a huge bad PR for Oracle if they would do it. And they are not very
loved.
Yeah, very loved by the community, especially the Java world was kind of concerned about the whole Android thing. And the Java and Google versus Oracle, and Oracle got a huge nudge by the justice, and then Google got a good reputation about it, and was proved that Android didn't violate any patents and stuff. Yeah, but hopefully we're going to see PHP in such environments soon. And having MySQL support is also a good thing, because then to have PHP is another. Without MySQL wouldn't be the whole benefiting from the whole PHP sense.
Yeah. Well, for me, the current MySQL versions work fine. I would probably not need much more development that implement new features. Only maybe security fixes that it's not good to have. Um, so, well, this is already a bit off topic. We are moving a bit off the PHP topics, um, but that's it. That all that was related with this Python IPVM, and we are now going to move on to one of our regular sections of our podcast, which today was sort of shorter because of there are not many topics to talk about. But so we are going to continue with a section on which we comment about the latest classes on the JS classes site, which is the PHP classes brother site. As I mentioned, this was a slow month. There were not many classes being published on the JS classes site. Probably for the same reason, people are on vacation, but there are at least a few to talk about. And well, Ernani, please go ahead and tell us what JavaScript objects would you like to highlight this month?
Yes, the first one would be regarding the JS classes, right? And I'd say that page transitions is one nice object here from Artur Zozins, I guess. He has been a huge contributor. He's from Latvia, and I like the kind of effects that it provides to the users. And Artur has been a huge contributor.
Yeah,
The
I think you can go to the there is a link to a demo page. Maybe you could show some effects there.
Yes, I'm trying to see if I open a new tab, I can still get the sharing out of it.
Yes, sharing is okay.
So, yes, there is a tutorial video here which displays.
Yes, there was actually a live demo, but I think that I don't know if the tutorial is large enough for us to see.
Yes. Is it going now?
Yeah, it's coming. It's a bit slow, but it's coming.
So you see that there is lots of functionalities here to scroll page and to get the difference between traditional ways of animating your websites and getting huge effects out of this component, and display transitions between pages, and at least present to your user, the visitor of your website, different ways of giving them the content that you offer them. So I'd say it's a good component.
Yes, it's very interesting. As usual, Artur Sosin is also a big contributor. The PHPClasses site sent this JavaScript component that is, as you said, to provide animations between two pages that you are navigating. So it sort of animate to the page when you leave and animate the new page when it opens, and it gives a very good effect. So kudos to Artur for that. And besides that, which other objects would you like to highlight?
Yes, the other one is the JavaScript historical date. It's from, let's try to spell his name correctly, Izikhor Komin. He's from Ukraine, and it's a very nice component because sometimes you have limitations on the way you present dates, And this is such a common thing to have functions like global functions or some sort of utility classes to display dates and everything. And this package seems to be very useful. And the idea is to present dates in different formats or in different styles of display, like Gregorian and other calendars, and count years and count minutes and count everything that you try to put a time sense on it. So kudos to him. And
Yeah.
I'd say that I'll probably be using this component in my implementations if I go
Yeah.
through with those in the future.
Yes, the although it seems a very simple object, what it does is something that goes the traditional limitations of date manipulation objects and functions, which are restricted to a certain time range. Well, I don't know if JavaScript has that limitation, but for instance, in PHP, you cannot go before 1970, and Ecor implemented a solution that is able to deal with dates that can be in the ranges of billions of years, AD or BC. And other than that, he also provides, this is actually the JavaScript version of another class that he already published in the PHPClasses site, but in PHP, that provides the same functionality, but in PHP. So I think it is a great contribution. And for myself, I also like to highlight a couple of components. There are a few more, but we don't have much time to comment about them. I'd like to start by the matrix operations by John Lawrence. This is again is the JavaScript version of another class that he published on PHPClasses site for the same purpose, to implement operations to manipulate matrices, and this can be useful for many purposes. Although he did not provide a specific example, this class is meant to be can be used for purposes like image transformation, when you apply some matrices to implement some filters, and this can be very interesting for that purpose or any other purpose that I'm not envisioning here, but it could be, there could be many other purposes. So kudos to John Lawrence from the United States for his contribution. Other than that, I also like to comment about on a framework by José Manuel Carnero from Spain. This framework is very similar to jQuery. It allows you to manipulate elements of the DOM for web pages and their properties, and this is somehow similar to jQuery because you can use sort of selectors to selector expressions to point which elements you want to manipulate, and other than that, it comes with some plugins to perform AJAX requests and move DOM elements around the page, and this can be an interesting replacement for jQuery for in case you think jQuery is too large. And since this package is simpler, I think it can be very useful. And given that, well, there will be other packages of JavaScript to comment, but unfortunately, we do not have time. We need to move on to the next section, on which we comment about the latest classes nominated to the Innovation Award of the PHPClasses site. Before that, I just wanted to comment on one thing, which is the fact that just a reminder, already mentioned this several times, but this is somehow related with these fellows here, these elephants here, and the JS Classes site still did not start the Innovation Award, and as I mentioned before, there is this challenge that the Innovation Award will be starting when it reaches, like I would say, there is this goal of I fixed it to be 200 packages. So when the JS class reaches this number of 200 packages contribute to the site, the Innovation Award will be started. But to encourage people to send them already their packages, there is this challenge that will reward the top 5 contributors of notable JavaScript objects. They will get one of these elephants as a symbolic reward for being such good contributors and helping the site to get to this level of amount of contributions. As you may see here, 85% of the challenge was accomplished. So there are only 29 packages remaining to reach the goal of the 200 packages. And well, I think not now that the people are returning from vacation, they can start sending more objects, so we can start the Innovation Award sooner, because once the Innovation Award is also starting in JS Classes site, there will also be sponsors giving away interesting prizes to the innovative packages. It will be interesting. Here in this page there is a challenge. There is an estimate of when the challenge will be accomplished. It estimates in about 4 months. So, but if people continue to send more packages, it will get to that goal sooner. And
that's nice. That's nice to see.
Yeah, there's a great adoption, at least until before these vacations, summer vacation, North Hemisphere, and we hope to, after the vacations, people get back to a greater submission pace. So that is it. Just a reminder of this challenge. So we are going to move on with talking about the PHPClasses Innovation Award Challenge. We are going to talk about the
winners of June, right?
Yes, right. They submitted their packages in June, and they were now nominated in July, and in August the results came out, and also probably because they were on vacation, there were not many nominees, just 5. Let's talk a bit about them. Ernani, would you like to start?
Yes, I've chosen 2 packages. One is the ability to run Nmap security audit tool through the web interface, and it was provided by Carl Holtz. Right, he's from Canada, and it's a very nice component because At least you don't require to log in to a specific machine to do it. Sometimes you are limited where you are, especially now with the mobility situation, where you have limited ways of performing such commands,
Yeah.
especially if you are into a telephone, a smartphone, or a tablet device. You can execute those.
Well,
Uh, yeah, anywhere,
where
but especially on those limited situations where you don't have the access to the shell and you need
yeah,
to perform it. So it has a very nice front end here based off on the
yeah,
pictures, and you can perform scene stealth or fast scan by any chance, and ping anything and check if the results has been responded back. So it's a very nice component, and it amazes me to see the ability of the users to be such creative.
yeah. Well, well, more than just for situations that on which you do not have access to the shell to run the nmap command, it's also more user-friendly to have a forms-based interface to pick options.
Oh
Sometimes
yes,
they are not very obvious when you
especially for
use.
users which are not familiar with the shell script
Yeah,
or the binary
yeah.
code that
Right. It's also easier to click on the options on a web page than have to type the names of the options, which sometimes are long and not very obvious. So kudos to Carl for his contribution. He has been sending quite a lot of good contributions. I hope he continues to do so. And okay. And other than that, which other class would you like to mention?
yes, the other one is the input validator. Although it's a non-trivial input validator because it uses XML schema to
Yeah,
validate arrays, it's a very nice way to see abilities of the users to come up with a way to validate information which can be a painful situation sometimes. And by
yeah,
defining a XML schema or XSD file, makes it easier for users to document requirements. And by documenting those in an XSD, you can benefit it from, so you can validate structures of data which can be
yeah,
passed as web services or any other ways. And having those in arrays can be used for both SOAP, for
yeah.
AMF implementations where you have the Adobe message format. So I see lots of benefits of using this component
Right.
for web
Well,
applications.
actually, this is to validate data in an array, so it could also be to validate the data in forms.
Yeah.
Well,
And the author
access,
is Tom Schaefer
yeah,
from
from
Germany.
Germany.
Yes.
Yes, he has contributed quite a lot of very good classes. Many of them have been nominated, and this does actually something more than just what you mentioned. Well, XSD is not exactly a trivial format that everybody is familiar. So, if you want to start defining rules in XSD, you don't have to actually learn it. What he provides is a way to give an array of sample data that you want to validate. You can build a proposal for an XSD file with all with the basic definitions for the types of the values that are coming, and you can validate them, and you can actually improve that XSD to make more strict validations. But if you don't want to learn how to define that XSD file, it gives you a head start to generate that XSD, and this is quite a good, I would say, a class to implement this goal, which is not very trivial. So kudos to for Tom for his contributions, and I'm sure you'll keep contributing with even more impressive classes like this. And on my behalf, I would like to talk. Well, let's talk about the other three, because this month there were not many, and you usually comment about four, but since we would leave one out, if you just comment those four this month, let's comment about all. And okay, let me open here the page and start talking about this Clicktale class from Frederick Hissing from Denmark. And basically what it does is it implements a way to track clicks that you do on a page. Not only the clicks that you do on links, but also certain clicks that you do on other elements, and it can keep track of the positions of the clicks, and then show some graphs with the
heat graphics.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what is the name, heat map of the. Well, I don't know if you call it a heat map. Usually you call it a heat map when you have certain ranges of colors being used to represent more frequent clicks in this case. And anyway, this is a very useful component, and it can be implemented transparently on a page, because it uses AJAX requests to communicate the information about the clicks to the server. And well, I don't know if users that are concerned with privacy, they would mind having this information to be tracked, but well, as long as you are in a page, many things can happen, and probably it would be nice to put a disclaimer for users that maybe do not want to have their clicks tracked. But okay, and the purpose that I see for this package is to for instance, study if usability of the page, and see if you put certain parts of a page on one side will work better than on another side, and it can be helpful for that purpose. So kudos to Frederick for this class. And,
that's very nice.
Yeah, and moving on, I would like now to talk about fuzzy index from Philip Strasny, which was the winner of this month. And basically what this class allows you is to index some text to perform what is called fuzzy search, which is to allows you to search for words that may not be exactly the way they are represented in a certain text. And what the class returns is a snippet of the section of the text on which those words that you search appear. And this can be very, very useful for search engines. Could be for web pages, but not necessarily just that. It could be, for instance, extracting the text from a PDF document and build some index using this class for searching it. And when you want to present the results, you could use the class to tell to show a snippet of the part of the document where what you search appears. So this is quite impressive, and it gives a lot of flexibility, because it allows you to store the index in a SQLite database, which can be very fast. But if you prefer to use some other database, you can extend this class and implement some database access adapter code to support other types of database you may find more convenient. So again, kudos to Philip for this contribution. And now finally I would like to comment the remaining class did not comment, which is Ternary Search Tree by Kyo Wang. He already contributed several classes for somewhat similar purposes, and this one is probably not very obvious what is the purpose for it, but it is basically to build trees of text to be searched in a more efficient way using the ternary search algorithm. I'm not going to enter in pretty much more detail than this because that's not really the purpose here, and they probably don't have the time. Anyway, kudos to Kyo Wang for his contribution. And I think with this, we basically conclude this podcast. As I said, it was a slow month, August, and there are not many many things to comment about, and I'd like to say goodbye, just inviting everybody else to keep contributing and sending their contributions. I just as an anticipation, in September I plan to make some very interesting releases of new features that will encourage even further the authors of the site, not just authors but also other kinds of contributors, for instance people that bring more users to the site using the Friends of the Site initiative, and as well users that, for instance, they rate packages, and when they rate packages they help the other users to find out which are the most appreciated packages in the site. And I'm not going into much detail right now, but I can promise that what is being planned and I'm finishing to implement is very interesting. And with this, I'd like to conclude. Ernani, any final remarks?
Oh yes, thanks everyone for being here with us. We've had some issues with the Google Hangouts, but hopefully you'll be able to watch it later. And we appreciate any comments, any constructive comments. So please feel free to do so. And stay tuned for latest episodes where we will try to plan ahead and let you guys be aware. And other than that, thanks a lot, and thanks for the contributions and for the opportunity as well, Manuel.
Okay. Well, we did. That's all for now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.